Hey, welcome to Lady Overlander Radio tonight. We are going to be talking about why women should never overland solo. Stay tuned. Oh. Grab your favorite drink, whether it's a coffee, cocktail, or tea, and get ready. It's Ladies' Night on Lady Overlander Radio. Lady Overlander Radio is sponsored by Artemis Overland Hardware, Midland Radio, Go Treads, Overland Spices, Wildland Coffee, Timbo Tusk, the Moore Expo, and Adventure Trail Outfitters, maker of the Overland Shower. Want to support Team Lady Overlander Radio in the 2023 Rebel Rally? You can donate to our cause on GoFundMe. Search Lady Overlander Radio, Rebel Rally 2023, and donate. Yeah, shameless plug, Team 185. Woo-hoo.
Let's go.
Nice.
Welcome, ladies. Thank you for joining us tonight. We have a lot of great guests on here tonight, and I hope this is going to be a very engaging conversation. How you doing, Arla?
Doing. How you doing?
You doing? I'm doing. I'm a little tired. Been working hard, but it's been a good week. So we got a lot done, and then I'm heading back your way. So
I know. It's been a very slow week. Like it's taking too long to get to the weekend.
Yeah. We're going to have a good weekend, though. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Lost somebody.
Who fell off?
Who did we lose?
Oh,
no.
Uh-oh.
Tara.
Okay. Tara, she'll be back. All right. So we'll wait.
It's a tropical storm. It's all good.
Yeah, I mean, she's only going through a hurricane. It's not that big
It's
of a
fine.
deal. It's fine. It's just Cat 1, I think. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and introduce Kristen, Badass Brunette. Welcome back to the show.
Hey.
She's currently sitting in an airport in Idaho.
Oh.
So then we got
Yeah.
Juliana. How you doing, girl?
Good. How are you?
Good. And you're in Oregon right now, correct?
Yeah, currently.
And then we've got Kelly Nomura.
Good
Did I
job.
do it? Okay. And where are you located currently?
I'm in Southern California.
Okay, so it's nice and warm there.
Yeah, it's cold for us. It rained yesterday. That's, a big deal. A whole day of rain.
And then Christina, Huntress Off-Road, welcome. And you are currently
Arizona.
Arizona. Okay. And then we have Tara. There she is.
Sorry,
Tara.
that was like the moment that the wind decided to take out the internet.
That's what we figured. We know you're dealing with
We're on cell tower now. This should be good.
Welcome, ladies. So tonight we're going to be talking about overlanding solo and why you should never do it. So, yeah.
Terrible.
The
Don't do
other
it.
day,
It's crazy. It's scary. No.
Stay
No.
home,
don't do
off
it.
the trails.
Do it.
Yeah, please stay home so then we can go. So I put out a post the other day, Arla and I did, and got a lot of comments, a lot of feedback. And the title was "Why Women Should Never Overland Solo." And believe me, people had a lot of opinions about that.
Mhm.
So of course I was joking because, as some of you know, I've overlanded for several years now, sometimes solo, sometimes with my husband and kids, full time. So obviously I'm still here. I'm okay. I'm not, in danger or anything. Nothing happened. So I'd like to talk about this tonight because I think that it's important to let people know, or especially women that may be interested in doing it, but are a little bit hesitant, or people are telling them they shouldn't do it, to let them know it's okay. Many of us have done it. Many of us continue to do it. We're all doing good. You have to just be safe and smart. And, there's a lot of benefits to it. So
Yes.
the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to show one of the comments, the first comment we got. And we'll be gentle with Phil. But this is the very first comment I got when I posted. So Phil says, "I'm a white dude and I don't overland solo."
First of all, thanks for clarifying your race.
Yep. And your gender.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know. Are there a lot of men that you think are hesitant to overland solo as well?
Probably.
I'm guessing.
Oh.
Hello, Arla. Hi. Yeah. So
Oh boy.
poor Phil's going to need somebody to go with him if he goes out.
It's okay.
But
Phil.
I have to say that it's surprising to me, but most of the time that I get naysayers saying something to me about going out solo, ironically enough, it's women that tell me that. Have you guys had that kind of experience, any of you?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah?
I would
Julie, why don't
say
you tell us about it? Oh, sorry, Tara.
No,
We
you're good.
both said, "Oh yeah."
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so Julie, you go first and tell us about your experience, and then Tara, you go ahead.
I've just had many women that say, "How can you actually do it alone? Aren't you afraid? Aren't you scared like somebody's going to come into your camp spot?" And a lot of them are like, "Do you carry protection? Like, how do you even do it? How do you feel comfortable?" Is most of the time that I get asked a lot is like, "How? How do you do it? How are
Mhm.
you comfortable?"
What about you, Tara?
I'd say I get it too. It's usually framed more as a question, like you're saying. It's less condescending as it is more of a curiosity and a question. But the reality to that is it's something you have to experience to understand that, at least in my experience, most of the people I meet out in the middle of nowhere are there for the same reasons I am and have no interest in actually interacting with other people too much if you're that far out. Or generally, I mean, I'm scarier than they are. Like, I'm not too worried. I don't know. Like, as long as you just make yourself scarier than they are, it's fine.
I
Yeah,
think for me, I've had more comments than questions. It's not like, oh, how could you or whatever. I've had a lot of other women say, like, I could never. I hear
Mhm.
I could never
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Agreed.
please don't say that.
But you
Agreed.
could.
Because I think you just have to get yourself to a point where you absolutely can. You know what I mean? Like, the I could never comment is the one that makes me the most crazy.
It kind of makes me a little sad,
So it
that,
makes me sad.
yeah,
Mhm.
that people would think that they could never do something like that. It's not like I mean, once you learn, what you need to bring with you and take the appropriate safety precautions, however, whatever your comfort level is or whatever you prefer, and if you go out there with some knowledge, if you've wheeled with other people or camped with other people, or had similar experiences and you've kind of gotten that background in your tool belt, there's absolutely no reason why you can't go do that. That's why I would hate to hear I would never. That's not good.
I always hear it
Not
as
good,
I
lady.
could never, not I would never. And if you ask them why they could never, do you ever ask them why they say that, Christina?
I do. And the comments that I get from a lot of the people who say I could never is basically like, I'm not that brave, or I don't know enough about vehicles, or I get a lot of like, I can't go that far from home because I'm originally from the East Coast, where it's significantly harder to find public land to do anything on than it is
Yes.
out here in the West. And so for them, like, they would have to go pretty far from home and from their comfort zones and from their networks and all that stuff to be able to do those things. And I think for me, leaving New Hampshire to literally one day, I just got in my Jeep. I got rid of my house. I put my stuff in storage. I sold everything else, got in my Jeep, and just started driving west with like no actual plan in mind.
Sounds
And
familiar.
yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
But it was just kind of like, okay, I could, because I had reached a certain point where I felt comfortable, and I didn't think that I was brave or anything like that, but I created a network for myself
Mhm.
around the country before I did it. So I started posting on like the Trail Hero, not Trail Hero, I'm sorry, Trail Recon Facebook pages and like Jeep groups and stuff like that around the country. And I was like, hey, I'm setting out to do this solo, and there might be a chance that something happens somewhere around this country that I need a hand, like a
Yep.
tow out of someplace or whatever. And while I realized that like it may not be the safest thing inviting strangers into wherever you are, it did actually make me feel better going on this Facebook page and being like, people literally just popped up with like, this is the city and state that I live in, and if anything happens to you while you're anywhere in this general area, give us a shout out on Facebook and we'll put our off-road club together and help you out or something. And so even though I
Yep.
left the East Coast with no network and like no safety net, no fall by plan, whatever, I had kind of like created this network for myself by doing
Same.
these things at a time.
When I traveled alone with my 3 kids to Oregon, that's what I did. I went on the Oregon Overlanders Facebook group and introduced myself, said that we would be traveling, with just me and the kids, asked for recommendations on things to take them to go see, and actually got a lot of really great feedback on really cool things and places to take the kids. And so, my husband had to
Yeah.
rush back to the East Coast. His mother was in the hospital, and we had a really great time and never had any issues. So the only time I've ever broken down by myself has been in Montana. So
Is that the
that was
tire?
interesting. No, it was the car wouldn't start at all. So yeah, that was the Land Cruiser, my old girl, who's since retired. But let's see, Arla, do we have any comments?
We do. We have a
Let's see
couple.
here.
Lee says that she took a solo trip to meet some friends in Moab last fall. Traveled through the southern Colorado to get there and stopped a lot of places. The only deal was her husband said she had to stay in hotels, no camping by herself. But she felt safe traveling alone. As far as that goes.
Okay.
And then Feral Joe, which is Misty's man. Anytime he's had a problem with people, it's always been close to population centers or outskirts of towns. Never had any issue when remote.
Yeah.
Same.
The only issues we've ever had have been with people, like animals.
Yep.
Never had an issue with animals. Almost 3 years of full-time overlanding. Never had. You had an issue, Christina? What happened?
Christina's always fighting animals.
Me.
I actually had to drive out of a campsite with my tent still up, and I just jumped out and tied the ladder up real quick and then drove away. I had a grizzly bear outside my camp. I was somewhere outside Grand Teton in Jackson Hole area, and like a complete moron, I made steaks for dinner that night.
Yeah,
And the next morning I woke up to this
steaks.
the next morning I woke up to grunting outside and opened up the window of my tent and I was like, I literally just pulled the ladder up, crawled down into the Jeep, and then drove away with the tent still on it. And until I got back to the main road, I didn't even bother getting out and folding up the tent.
I might have pooped myself a little in that situation. Yeah, I don't blame you there for getting the heck out of
I've
there.
woken up to the grizzlies in a ground tent because I would tell my children, no, it's fine, because some places you can't car camp there, you have to ground. And so that was last year, and of course Riley's freaking out. I'm like, there is no chance we're seeing a bear. 5 a.m. I hear that sound outside the tent. I'm like, dear God, don't let him wake up, because I will never ever hear the end of this. He just waited for the bear to leave. That would have been horrible.
Here's some jokes right here from my husband that I had a bear outside of my tent one night in Colorado. True. Very true. I was freaking out. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not a fan of that at all.
See, the bears don't bother me as much.
Oh, it looks like
Yeah,
somebody
I
else
think
had a
Tara makes
grizzly
friends
bear.
with the bears.
I do. I'm way better at it than with people.
Yeah.
Experiencing Arkansas says side by sides. There, I said what I said. He
Oh,
has
yeah.
had some side by sides roll up in his camp in the middle of the night.
Oh, yeah.
Right up to his tent.
He
For sure.
took care of business though.
He did take care of business. We'll leave it at
In his,
that.
in his
There's Matt.
boxers.
In his drawers. Jason. Anyway.
For level, you'll have, hopefully.
Matthew says, I was taught from the start to know your vehicle and its limitations, know the area you're going, and know what to bring. The more you research you do. God, why is it freaking out like that? Stop it.
Uh-oh.
Usually the better comfort level you have, hopefully.
Yeah.
Agreed.
That's very true.
I over-research things, but usually I'll plan a whole trip, because we go all summer, so it's 12 weeks. And then we don't usually end up at any of those places, but at least it's the safe backup plan. And I over-researched all of that. So no matter where we are, there's usually that, okay, we can defer to the original plan if all else fails, but over-research.
Yeah,
We have a
that's
Facebook
definitely.
user. I don't know who this is, but it says, yes, we had a grizz at our camp within 30 minutes of arriving in the Grand Teton.
Always Tetons.
Yeah,
Mm.
the Tetons
You know
are
what?
very.
Can I go
What's
back
that?
to Matt's point for a second where it
Yeah.
says know your vehicle and its limitations?
Mhm.
I will say,
What
and,
limitations?
maybe this is not just me. I'm wondering about the rest of you ladies too.
Where we are.
I feel like I err on the side of caution significantly more when I'm traveling alone. even though I know that like my vehicle is capable of doing certain things, and like I look at an obstacle and I know that I would be totally fine if there was somebody behind me on the off chance that something happened or whatever. Like I totally err on the side of caution when it comes to that stuff when I'm by myself. And if it looks even remotely too sketchy for me to do alone, I absolutely turn back around and don't do it. Like it's just not worth even trying to go that far and deal with that stuff when you're by yourself.
Yep.
And yeah,
I
that's a really
don't,
good point.
but I break things. So, I think my comfort level over the last year, especially with fixing the things I break, because that level of education on things grew so much for me so rapidly, that gave me the comfort to go into scenarios where, okay, if I do break it, it's just going to be that, and I have the extra parts, or like I know kind of. That gave me a lot more comfort when I'm that far out to decide, because if you get that far, it's like, okay, I came this far, why would I stop now? At least that's what my brain tells me. And then there's always that last mile that gets me usually. But it's always in the last mile. But comfort with knowing how to fix everything if I break it, and knowing that I have the extra parts and extra bolts. It's always extra bolts. That helps.
Yeah, they wiggle loose a lot.
Yes, they do.
A lot.
A lot. Too much.
What about
Yeah,
you,
and
Kristen?
Try not to get locked behind gates either, because that's not fun.
Bolt
Yeah,
cutters.
definitely not.
I probably should add those, because I've been locked behind a gate twice so far.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a hint for sure.
Well, I would say a lot of those areas near Tetons and all that too are a lot of ranch land that they will allow us to cross, but even to get to like, the public land. So gates end up getting locked behind you or things like that. And usually there's signs and things explaining to you like when and how and where. But yeah,
Sometimes they don't have signs. You go through the gate and you're like, cool, this is an open gate. And you normally to go like before like the evening, you should probably get out of the area. Like rule of thumb, I say I should probably be out of that area by 3. And I guess they decided to lock it at 1 o'clock for some reason.
Oh,
I
okay.
was like, oh my God, too many guys.
Yeah, that's actually another good point. I prefer to be at camp and setting up camp by about 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock, no later than that. I don't really like trying to find camp at night. It's happened sometimes, but what do you guys do? Do
See,
any of
I'm
you?
different. I actually
Yeah?
like finding camp at night, because the reason I like finding camp at night is because when I'm by myself, I don't want people knowing I'm a girl by myself. So at nighttime, I can have my hair tied back. I can have a
okay.
hood on. I don't speak. I get out of my car. I do what I need to do. And then I get in my car. I don't make any sound.
I was gonna say I would say there's the factor of, especially if like my Jeep's fairly neutral and I keep everything blacked out on my Jeep too, so they can't see who's in there. So if I make camp when it's getting dark, especially if I'm alone, the kids are with me half the time, but like they can't tell if I'm a dude or not. So yeah, or how many people are in there.
I am the total opposite.
Exactly.
Yeah, I like
I
to
like
set up
rolling
early.
in. Yeah, I like rolling in the daylight, because for me, like, it's a comfort factor knowing my surroundings and being able to like look at all of my outs and seeing all of my options and like knowing what certain sounds in the dark might be. And that
See, I don't want to know what those are.
Sometimes they're cows.
More comfortable.
There was one time we thought it was a cow and it was not.
Oh,
yeah, I like having that knowledge of like exactly where I am.
how about you, Kelly?
So to be completely honest, I am not like these ladies that go out and travel alone. But like thinking back, I was like, I don't know how much input I'm going to give. But I'm one of those people that just has an adventurous spirit. And like, I was in a loner Mitsubishi with a rooftop tent that was a loner driving through Utah. And I was like, oh, just camp, no big deal. Someone told me where to go. I didn't think twice about it until a girlfriend of mine is like, thought I was crazy, told me I needed to turn around and find the nearest Hampton Inn. And she would not get off the phone unless I did it. And I was like, I'll be fine. Don't worry about it. And she's like, no. So I don't know. I mean, someone made the mention of driving. I've driven like from California to New Mexico. This is before overlanding was even on my radar. Didn't think twice about it. Like traveling alone, I don't know. I think I've always been a very independent person, but baby steps towards that is, I think, what helps also kind of get in the mindset of it, like doing a long road trip alone, but staying in hotels where you feel a little bit of sense of comfort. I mean, I stay in hotels now by myself all the time because of work, or travel by myself all the time because of work, because now I'm, driving a lot further than I ever had. And it's a mindset. Like, I don't know. I don't think about the bad. I just think about, okay, what am I going to do? Be prepared. You just always have to be aware of your surroundings, regardless of where you are and what you're doing. I think that helps. So whether you're traveling on your own and going into an area by yourself or not. But I'd have to agree. I think when you get far enough out and you're around like-minded people, you're safer to a certain degree. They're not going to bother you. They want their alone space just as much as the other. Like, a friend pointed out this place in Utah, the like Little Grand Canyon or something. And I went out there and like, you wouldn't see anyone for distances, but I saw people once, the sun came up and you see people around, which gives you a little bit of comfort. But at the same time, I don't know. I just never felt a threat by the other people around me. It was more of a safety. If something went wrong, at least there's someone down the way, I guess is more my outlook on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get more paranoid at hotels because the only places I've had a problem with people where I've been jumped or had concerns were at hotels in, populated areas. So middle of nowhere, the likelihood is kind of a numbers game. The likelihood of that happening out there, as far as number of people versus you, as my children tell me, like the likelihood's very low because they're the math kids.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a second and catch up. We've got some questions and some comments here.
We do. Lee's asking, do you consider a ground tent safer or less safe than a rooftop tent? That's a good question.
The age-old question
From what? So my son still thinks that the rooftop tent is safer from the bears. Apparently he's forgotten bears can climb. But we're going to leave it that way. But they're the same. Like, it's really what you're comfortable with. My oldest refuses to touch a rooftop tent. He sleeps in his own ground tent. It's just, they're safety-wise, they're pretty much the same.
Yep. Christina?
Maybe I'm like imagining it. I have no idea, but I feel significantly safer in the rooftop tent. Like, okay, something has to have the effort to come up here to get me. And hopefully in the couple of seconds that it takes, whatever it is to like climb up here, I'll be able to shoot it.
It's always raccoons. Christina versus the animals.
Too. Yeah, you can feel it too. Like if it's a bear or cougar or something, you'll feel the rig do that.
Right.
Whereas if you're in a tent, you're just
Yeah.
So I'm 100% about the rooftop tents. I just, maybe, like I said, maybe it's just me, but like I feel.
Oh no, it definitely helps, especially when you're like, it's a mental thing, but like the reality is technically safety-wise, it's the same.
Only one.
But only one.
Yeah. Yeah, my tent has 2 doors.
Rooftop tents usually have 2 exits. You're just gonna have to jump.
Yeah,
That's 3.
you're gonna have to jump a little.
Yeah.
Open up those windows.
You won't mind in that moment. It's fine. Just
Yeah.
not that far.
My rooftop tent has 4 different ways out, so I'm not even remotely concerned. I will get out of that thing. Like it will.
All right. So let's see. What's the next one, Arla? Experiencing Arkansas?
Yep. He says he had razorbacks coming to his camp near Mulberry Creek around Redding area back in July, which that's in Arkansas in the Ozarks. Mama Pig had Peppa Pig and George too.
Oh,
See, those would scare me more than a bear.
yeah.
oh yeah.
I mean,
They're mean.
Yeah.
they
For
are.
sure.
mean.
And Christina's like, I would have already shot it and cooked it. It's fine.
Oh, yeah.
Dinner.
A little gamey.
Put it on my saddle.
Yeah. Kelly says, I dial back the types of trails I do when solo also, especially when way out there.
Yeah. I definitely think that's a good idea, especially if you're at all in any way, shape, or form concerned. I mean, I know that at times we've all taken risks and sometimes they've backfired, but, usually we try to be a little conscientious about where we are, and especially if you're by yourself. Do you guys use
Dangerous
any
things safely.
Mhm. You guys use any location satellite locators like Garmin or any
Yeah.
like that? Yeah. Definitely
Yeah.
recommend that.
I think, was that unanimous? Did everyone just nod
I
their
think
head?
so.
I think everybody probably uses the same Garmin device at this point.
Probably.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. I give it just to my sister. One of my sisters at all times always has the ability to locate me, and they do freak out when I do just like it's like takes 24 hours if I drop off the map completely and they can't get that thing to work, and then it happens. But otherwise, yeah, somebody can always locate me. Usually just one person.
Yeah.
Sometimes I forget that I have my dad and my mom watching me, and sometimes my dad will text me and be like, "I see you're in blah blah blah." I'm like, "What? How?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's right."
And that is why only my sisters have it.
Yeah.
Arla gets mad if she catches me at the Mexican restaurant without her. She says something.
Yeah.
I
was
forgot
camping
that I
on
had
the edge of
location services turned on my phone this summer when I started without the kids, and Riley apparently was tracking me, like wherever I was. So if I went somewhere without him that he wanted to be, then I would hear about it. And I couldn't figure out for a while how he was tracking, like how he figured out where I was. And I heard him telling one of his friends that he was tracking me on his iPad on like the Find My thing, so he would look for the
Oh,
dog.
that's funny.
That's funny.
Crazy bears.
That's funny.
All
I
right.
got a
So,
question. Favorite
Okay.
camp food?
Ooh.
Who's first?
Like as far as cooking or the lazy food.
Yeah, that's a good
about
question, actually.
I mean, if you go to Panera, you get the little thing of mac and cheese, and then you throw it in under your cover in your engine, and by the time you've driven the trail, it's warm for you. So that's dinner. That's if my kids aren't around.
there you go.
Man,
That's nice.
I'm a sucker for steaks.
as we learned,
Apparently, so are
Yeah.
the bears.
Bougie.
Steaks. Doesn't always work out well for me, but I'm a sucker for steaks and sweet potatoes in the fire, like
Oh,
in
yes.
foil and cooked in the
Whoa.
campfire. Oh my god!
Kristen, what about you?
Arla,
I'm a stir fry kind of girl. Like throw veggies and protein in and toss it up. Easy.
there you go. That's nice and easy.
Yep.
very quick.
I'm lazy. When I'm by myself, I just do like sandwiches or peanut butter and honey sandwiches in the morning time. But when I'm with people, I will tend to cook more. But yeah, by myself, I'm like, sandwiches, we're good.
Yeah. Keep it simple.
No.
Ah, see, you said lazy
You said
food.
lazy food. Yeah, the lazy food, the mac and cheese, and yeah,
burritos.
I cook on the engine.
French
Fine.
syrup.
Ooh,
Hey,
French
Jason, I'm
toast.
still waiting for you guys to make that for me, so I'm not talking to you about that right now.
If my kids are there, they expect bacon and cinnamon rolls and like full meals 3 times a day. But
Oh,
if
no.
it's just me, lazy food.
I think I eat a lot of salads if it's lazy food stuff. Like I do a lot of
Same.
salad. I like
Yep.
caprese salad. I could live on that anyway. But
that's so good.
yeah, that's kind of my jam when I'm just not interested in really cooking.
Yeah, and usually I'll pre-cook all the meat. Like for if we have a week, then at the beginning of the week I'll pre-cook whatever meat we're taking because I don't want raw meat in there, especially because we're usually in bear country. So I mean, technically the trailer is a giant bear box, but I still don't want it in there. I just in case I kill the fridge or something, which happens. So I just pre-cook everything like once a week, meat-wise that we need, and keep it in there.
Yeah. Saves a lot of mess as well. So we had one more comment from Hourless Life. Arla, can you throw that back
Yeah.
up there?
I thought we were
Yeah,
doing that.
right.
This
Oh,
one?
there it is.
Yeah, I did that one.
Oh, sorry.
Stop
Yeah.
clicking, ma'am. That's my job.
Fear is a powerful thing. If we based all our decisions on worst case scenarios, then we would never do anything.
Mhm.
They're currently in Colombia. They
Yeah.
just made it to Colombia.
wow.
Eric and his wife and their son.
Mhm.
So
Kathy says Garmin is behind. I watch it on Life 360 app. Life 360 is more up to date. I
That's
do
my
like
mom.
360.
Hi, Mom.
yeah.
I was saying, Life
As long as you
360
have
doesn't work
cell
where I go.
signal. Yeah.
Yeah, I have to have satellite.
That's
I try to go as far as they can.
in place.
I was saying, what is Life 360? I've never heard of that.
It's like a cell phone tracking app, but it has to have your cell phone service. So like when I'm real remote, it won't work. So then she goes to Garmin.
Right.
But like she said, Garmin can be really behind.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can go like up to 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, which wouldn't
Yeah.
be good if they're like in an emergency situation. But
Mhm.
Well, it's got the emergency one, depending on the settings. So like I pay for the satellite, the texting one where I can get, it has to be short text, but I can get text out that I've never had a problem with those going through. But of course, keep it short and only in an emergency kind of thing because it's not cheap, but I always keep that active on mine.
We must have
We're
the same
skipping.
one then, because mine's the same way. Like mine's accurate to like within minutes, because I just keep the settings such that like it drops breadcrumbs every like 30 seconds
Yep.
or something,
Yeah,
and then
same.
it pings the satellite every 2 to 10 minutes. So
Wow.
depending on where I am, like
Do you
if I'm,
guys
what?
do you have the mini or do you guys have the Explorer?
I have the Explorer Plus.
See, that's why I have the mini, and the mini's like can be an hour before it even sends a text or something.
Oh,
Yeah,
Well,
I
you
have that.
the
I have the
mini.
mini as
How was
well.
your? Interesting.
Well,
you
double
guys-
check that your app is updated on it. And then
Mm.
your settings are in your app about like how often it's pinging and going. But this one, I've never had a problem with this one. There was, what's the other one that they make, the Jeep one that they did with the other brand? That one never worked when I wanted to, but this one I haven't had a problem with.
Nice.
Have any of you guys used Zolio? I think that's what it's called. Zolio. So we're based out of Canada. It's another satellite. It doesn't have as much function, I don't think, as the Garmin. But
It's
at
about
least,
like the Spot.
yeah, it works with like an app on your phone, exactly like the Spot. I'm just curious.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it seem to be a little quicker with response and getting messages out, or?
So I've heard. That's the feedback I've gotten from people. So I'm just
Hmm.
curious.
Yeah.
Anyone
I've only seen like 2 people use it so far, so I don't have a good frame of reference for it.
Yeah.
Oh, this is a smarty comment.
Got
Somebody
another.
wants to get smacked. This dude.
Reasons I don't have a
not-
husband.
He's not wrong.
Nobody's tracking me.
It's true. It does tell
He's
you
a
how
stage
fast
5
you drive.
clinger. He's a stage 5 clinger. Make a laugh.
Yeah.
Lord.
All right. So we've gone
Nobody's
down.
following me.
We've gone down a dark rabbit hole with Arla's driving here. So
Okay, we all know.
let's see here.
That's why I'm the driver for the Rebel Rally on our team.
That's right, Arla. You sure are.
Mhm.
What did Lee Gibson have to say, Arla?
Lee, let me scroll back up here. Lee says on her Colorado trip, she would turn on her inReach and set up tracking for her husband when I leave the hotel and leave it on so he could see at all times. Then she would text safe and locked in before, heading off to bed.
Smart.
Yeah.
Very good.
That all works.
Yep. I would say putting systems in place. I think all of the questions I get all the time or told why I shouldn't, there's so many, I call them systems, but I have systems for everything, as far as people may joke about how OCD organized I am. But there's ways to put things into place to keep you safe and to keep track of things and to, deal with those things, and also to deter people that would want to bother you if they know you are using those things.
Mhm.
So, because typically knowing that you're being tracked, watched, that, there's somebody, they will leave you alone if they think somebody's looking for you.
True.
Yeah, I
Another
remember, Julie, you told me a story on the podcast episode I had you on where somebody rolled up into your camp.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
that's still to this date. That's the creepiest thing that ever happened. It was me and one other lady. We were camping by ourselves, and these ladies don't know the story. I'll do a quick version of it. 2 ladies camping by ourselves. It's like maybe 10 o'clock, 11. I don't remember what time, but we're sitting at camp, and this car pulls up, and it stops. It slows down. It turns its lights off, and then it honks the horn. And they get out and they start walking towards our camp, and it's pitch black. We can't see anything. And I'm like, oh, what is going on? Like, it scared me because I had no idea what they were doing. Why did they honk? Why did they turn their lights off? And why were they walking towards us? Like, that scared me. Nothing happened, luckily. They were probably trying to find camp or something. But still, I was like, this is not okay. Like,
Yeah.
that's creepy.
Where were you?
Washington or Oregon? I don't remember which one.
Say in Washington, that's usually the signal for somebody who's meeting up for a drug deal. Because in a
Oh.
lot of the BLM areas, it's been a thing this year. I had that happen too, where they're in the dark, they can't always tell what your rig is either. And if there's certain areas that are kind of those designated, they use a lot of the public land for it, or the tribal, like all the tribal designated land, which is usually access, easy access where there's some limitations on the police. So that is usually, as I was told this year when I experienced something similar, because they can't see from a distance other than like your lights. So if they mistake you for that, that's usually like the honking and then Usually
That would make sense
that.
then. That's creepy.
In Washington, I say that in Washington is my other home base. So that is the Washington thing. Currently, it's awesome.
Yeah. We made sure when we were in Washington and Oregon to get as far away from the major cities as possible when we set up camp, because I had heard that there's a lot of people that reside there full time that aren't always, very
Yeah.
friendly and, on the up and up, a lot of drug stuff going on. And so we kind of avoided the major metropolitan
Yep.
areas, the national forests and stuff around those. But
Yeah.
all right.
But
we
that
have
I
any
would say
more
if it was
questions,
Washington,
Arla?
that's what that usually is. And then they realized that you were
Yeah.
probably not the person they were looking for.
Right? And they're like, oh, get out of here.
All right. Question from Matt.
Matt again. Let's see. When you are solo overlanding or have your site all set, what is your go-to entertainment? Books, iPad with downloaded shows, computer to write? Question mark.
Well, not the electronics. And Matt's a workaholic. So, of course, he would say computer to write because that's all he does. But not the electronic. Usually it's hiking or, something physical activity wise, usually hiking.
I have a dog, so he's like a constant source of entertainment anyway. But, I also, when I was doing it full time and like living out of the Jeep and traveling the country that way, I had to work. So I would typically, like, once I got into camp and was at my site, I would make myself dinner, do all of those things, and then pop my laptop open and get some work done and just kind of buckle down, because my laptop was charging off of the Goal Zero that I had in the Jeep the entire time. So that way, like, that thing was all charged up and ready to go in the evenings. And once I got settled, I could just plug it right in. And I'd start writing blog posts and doing all my sort of digital marketing stuff that I was doing from the road at the time.
Yeah. I too have
But
had to work from the
entertainment wise, it's still the dog.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
How about you,
If I have the
Kristen?
kids, I just do whatever the kids want.
We'll go hiking. Got a one wheel.
Dirt bike.
I'll go zip around, dirt bike. I try to stay like outside and active. Otherwise it's Netflix. Sun goes down and it's cold. You go into your tent and like turn a little movie on or something like that.
I like to read.
Do you feel like having the dirt bike gives you more freedom?
Yeah, to explore for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't beat my truck up as much, so being able to go out on the dirt bike and just go faster and longer and further, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Float
Float
life.
The one wheel.
How about you, Kelly?
That's what he's referring to.
Oh,
Trying to think. I usually drive during the day when I'm doing some kind of travel. And then evening would just be. I'm a big podcast listener, hence podcast. When I travel by myself, music starts to get monotonous to me. So I'll do a lot of podcast listening. So I'm usually like finishing up an episode or wanting to listen to another, something like that. Or doing some kind of work related stuff. If there is reception to do social media and catch up on things. I mean, there's always things to do in my world. So just even the quiet, like do nothing is nice. Take advantage of that when I can.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I know a podcast you can listen to. I have a recommendation.
Yeah.
Name drop.
Catch up. Yeah.
So we have another question from Lee.
Yes. Anyone ever had issues at some of the more remote Forest Service campgrounds?
no.
Kind of issues.
Nope.
Christina
I have.
says no.
Christina, it's another animal.
Is it an animal?
It wasn't an animal this time. I swear, it wasn't an animal this time. And this is again, this goes back to just the way that I choose to travel when I'm traveling solo. I was in a dispersed Forest Service campsite. I was in the Blue Ridge Mountains, like deep in the rural Blue Ridge Mountains. And it was just like, I can't explain it. I just got a bad feeling and I couldn't shake this really bad feeling that I had that I wasn't supposed to be there. And it wasn't like someone stumbled into my campsite. It wasn't like anything specific actually even happened to me on the way in or anything like that. I could not shake this feeling that it was not a good situation and I should not be there. And I can't, to this day, I cannot explain what it was. But if I feel like that about any place at all, regardless of where I am, I GTFO. Like,
I would say, Kristen,
trusting my gut.
didn't that come up? I think this came up at Expo during the roundtable when people were asking about that, and kind of like the same thing. If you have intuition for a reason, your body will tell you if you are somewhere that you are not supposed to be if you listen to it. But to the flip side of that, there are times that I have felt fine, and one of my kids will tell me that they do not. Like, and if they can't shake that, we also leave in those scenarios because, again, there just may be something that I'm not picking up on. But I've had my youngest will do it occasionally, where he'll be like, "Nope, not here. Like, just we're not staying here," and not for any. He can't give you a really specific reason, but it just doesn't feel right. And so then we get to leave and pack up camp in the dark. It's fine. But yeah, it's kind of number one rule for me is always just trust that. It's never failed.
Totally.
I'm going to throw up a couple of the comments I grabbed from Instagram and Facebook from the post the other day as well. Let's see here. So Northology is referring to why women should not overland solo. Is this still a question? And,
it is.
I think she was surprised that, yes, it still is a question. Yes. And Argo's Girl Outdoors said, great hook in the graphic. I saw red for a moment. Definitely got my attention. I've had quite a few people reach out to me thinking that I was serious about that, which is surprising. But
well, looky there.
Kristen, nope, never.
Nope.
Never.
Never.
No.
Don't do it.
I mean, I think going back to like Phil's point on, I'm a white dude and I don't overland solo. I don't even necessarily think it's a question of like whether women should overland solo. I think it's just like no matter who you are, like regardless of gender or anything like that, like no matter who it is, if you don't feel comfortable doing it alone, don't do it alone. Whatever, it's fine. Like
that's on you. That's your opinion.
You maybe get to that comfort level where that's okay, but like, should people in general overland solo if they're not prepared, if they're not ready for it, if they're not anything? My answer would be probably not. So unless you feel like you are actually ready, unless you've taken the time to prepare yourself as much as you possibly can, because I truly feel like you can never like be quote unquote ready. Like at some point you have to just go and figure it out. But like to get to a point where you're as prepared as you possibly can be, regardless of your gender, like should you overland solo? Maybe not if you're not ready for it. But once you get yourself to that place, I don't think it matters who you are. It's just as dangerous for a guy to do that kind of stuff as it is for a woman, in my personal opinion. So,
if not more so to me, for some ways, like I feel like they would deal with more confrontational situations than we would, because for the most part, again, the majority of people we run into out there, like, yeah, I mean, I like to joke with the people that will stop me. Like I'll get the men that stop me and say, are you lost? Are you okay? And if they ask me if I'm lost, I'll be like, I sure as fuck hope I am. Like that was the goal. But like, but for the most part, there's more of a helpful nature to most of the people I run across. But I feel like the guys, if they're alone, will probably run into more confrontational situations than we would.
Yeah. Oh, I've ran into that a lot where like I'll be pulled over off to the side of the road and I'll be like scrolling on my map, kind of looking where I want to go, and people will pull up and it's always normally a dude, and the dude's like, are you okay? Are you lost? And at first I'm like, I'm good. Like, I'm fine. But then normally they're nice and they're like, do you need, I'm like, no, I'm good. I just like going in the middle of nowhere and driving. They're like, oh, okay.
Same. I like it when I have the trailer and they'll ask me. I'm like, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's my first time. And then I leave. And
I'm so Kelly PW is, but I'm dying.
Yes.
There's a comment on here that's got my attention.
Oh, okay.
Kelly PW here.
Kelly
has some things to say. Yeah, never use my penis to defend myself. There's that. Thank you for sharing.
That's the Coast Guard coming out. That's the Coast Guard coming out, Arla.
Yep.
There you go.
That's our Kelly.
Oh, Lord.
It's true though.
Okay. Yeah. Moving on. That's off-road. What's your dream destination? A place you haven't been, but it's on the top of your wish list.
Alaska.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been, but yeah.
Alaska's up there. Yeah. New Zealand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Kelly rules.
Kelly rules.
Kelly rules.
I will say a new destination on my bucket list because Dan Grech writes for Tread, and I just read his story, which I think is in our current issue. But he went to Tasmania, so he's in Australia right now, overlanding through Australia. But he went to Tasmania. It wasn't on his original list, but he's like, "Oh, why not? Let's go." It sounds amazing. All the critters and animals, and like, it's
Things
really
that will kill you. Christina, you should go.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Yeah. I may not want to go.
That's for you.
He sold me on Tasmania. I'm like, now I want to go to Tasmania. Never was on my radar. So that'd be
Feral Joe, I'm curious as to Hourless Life having any instances in their international travels as far as a camp incident or concerning situation. Agreed, don't let fear dictate what you have.
What you do, yeah. I'm wondering,
Has
Eric and
anybody
Brittany, are you guys
here-
still on?
Are they still there? Has anybody here done much international travel? I know in the last couple of years, most of us haven't, but I say,
A little bit.
then you've done some, a little bit. And how was, like, for your experience, I know with mine, like, did you find it better, worse, different than traveling here?
I mean, better. I did the Baja Peninsula, went all the way down and back up, spent a month down there, and I didn't want to come home. I felt more welcomed outside of my own country than in my own country.
Agreed.
That's what
And
I hear
generally, I've had the
across
same
the board.
experience.
Yep. It's people are more inviting and more welcoming, and like you only hear about the bad things in the news, but I mean, bad things happen everywhere, and it's actually, I don't know, I've heard just more beautiful and amazing experiences outside of our own country.
Yeah.
Same. And any places that I know I'm at where they don't like Americans, I just tell them I'm Canadian. Not even kidding.
Well, I mean, Eric and Brittany are traveling with their 5-year-old son, and I don't think that they've ever, from what I've been told, they've ever felt, that they were in danger. Or anything. And
Yeah.
they've gone all the way down through Central America now. And like I said,
Yeah.
they're in Colombia. So
Yeah, I feel like culturally, where we're at here, there's less, I don't know what to call it. It's different here. There's less welcome, actually, especially if you have
Yeah.
Florida license plates. They really hate you. I actually push those occasionally. But yeah, there's different. There's just always more welcome, or just generally the expectation is that you help somebody. If I don't know, it's different.
yeah, people seem to be very welcoming and friendly and humble and definitely. And I was going to mention earlier when we were talking about people being concerned if you're a female traveling solo. I had Dot Becker on almost a year ago now. She was overlanding solo through Africa, and she said that almost every stop she made, she got a marriage proposal because the guys were so concerned with her traveling by herself. They were like, maybe I can marry you and make sure you're okay. And
You're
she's like,
protected.
no, I'm good. I'm good. I've
Heard that
already
one
had a
before.
couple of husbands. I'm good. I don't need,
Or check that off the list. Thanks anyway.
I'm good.
It's a lot of work to get rid of those. I would say Africa's probably the only place that I have, so because of all 17 years of photo travel international work, where I would end up put on a team, and then if they were going, it was of course me and all men. And so usually what I would end up getting told is that having me with them made it a safety liability for them, as far as depending on the country, as far as for kidnapping factors or,
True.
blonde female kind of a thing. So in those scenarios, I would usually pull out of those jobs because, again, there's, they've got families and people to come home to, and they don't need an extra safety factor involved. But that depends on the country.
Yeah.
But that's the only place I've had limitations job and work wise because of that.
Yeah. And again, it's all about being aware of where you're going, knowing the background of that place, learning about the culture, learning about safety things, learning where the embassies are,
Research.
all of that kind of stuff. It's definitely smart to be prepared and, to have some backup plans, especially if you're going solo, and maybe especially if you're a female. I don't know. Traveling with children. I mean, there's all kinds of different scenarios where your risk can be increased, but, at the same time, like we've said repeatedly throughout the podcast, if you're smart and you're safe and you plan and you prepare, you know your vehicle, you take precautions, you let somebody know where you are, you learn as much as you can, maybe take a wilderness survival class or a first aid kit or a class, or there's lots of different things you do. Take a off-road class. There's off-road courses,
I was gonna say, I feel like we keep saying that generally. So can each person go around and tell something they've done to prepare properly for doing it solo, or something that
Yeah.
helped them? That way people can get actual examples.
Who wants to start?
I can't really
Don't be
add
shy.
anything into that because I didn't really prepare. I just kind of went for it and said, "Oh, it'll work out." I was just like, "Let's go for it, whatever."
Yeah.
Got it.
But like,
Speak to that.
I made sure I had the Garmin, and I made sure like mom knew where I was at. So I guess in that sense, like I'm a little bit prepared. But as far as like where I decide to go or what I decide to do, I just kind of just decide every day something new or whatever, and I'm just like, I'll figure it out, whatever.
Yep.
Okay, I can speak to the
Sometimes-
mechanical side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Most women are not comfortable taking classes or in groups, especially when taught by men. That's just how it is. But there are alternatives to that, where at least for Jeep World, I feel like we have a different community there on its own for like how we all learn how to build our vehicles. But for women who are uncomfortable, I kind of usually remind them if they want one-on-one time, find a local off-road shop that you trust and ask them to give you one-on-one instruction from top to bottom of your vehicle of the basic things that are going to break. I mean, you can pay for somebody to teach you that stuff one-on-one just as much as you could in a class. And there's plenty of off-road shops that would gladly do that for you if you ask them that or explain to them that you want the one-on-one instruction because maybe you learn it differently. But that would be one of the number one ways, because you're very rarely going to find a class that's taught by women. I'm still working on making that happen for a certain area of people this year, but it's rare. So ask for one-on-one instruction. Don't be afraid to ask. Like, honestly, most of them don't mind and will gladly give you that time and do the one-on-one with you. Also, buy the freaking manual with all the diagrams for your vehicle, because it doesn't matter. Whatever does break is going to be the thing that you didn't teach yourself. And if you have the manual with all of the original diagrams to your vehicle in it, you can usually figure it out.
Yep. Very good tip. Christina?
Unless you blow up your engine, Christina.
Oh yeah, unless you detonate your engine. Yeah, there's that. But actually the Jeep was one of the first things that was like part of my kit for like being safe in other places. First of all, internationally, especially if you're traveling internationally, parts availability for Jeeps, like you can get parts for a Jeep in any country around the world pretty much, because Jeeps are all over the world. So there was that. And then parts availability in random places around the US. Obviously, it's just one of the most common vehicles that you can stumble upon. So I felt good driving that. It's my 5th Jeep. So I'm kind of used to Jeep stuff, working on Jeeps, whatever, the common parts that break on Jeeps. And so the box that's on the front of my rack on the roof is literally just spare parts. So extra belts and bolts and like anything that you can possibly think of that frequently breaks on a Jeep is probably up inside that box, and like tire repair kits and all that stuff. So that was like another thing that I sort of prepped ahead of time, was pulling together a little bit of spare whatever I knew commonly broke in my Jeep. So that's one of the things that I did ahead of time. I personally have taught hunter safety and women's firearm safety classes in the state of New Hampshire for like 10 years when I was in my 20s. And so I felt good with basic survival skills, basic first aid, basic everything when it came to if anything bad should happen while I was out on the road by myself. Map and compass techniques. So God forbid, like all of my electronic devices failed, including my Garmin, and I couldn't charge anything or anything like that. Like just having those very basic skills made me feel better and made me feel more prepared. And then for about a year before I left, I sort of like just traveled locally and just camped locally and like felt like I was dialing in my vehicle and the stuff that I was bringing with me for like what I would need. And like last minute things that I would forget, I would remember to like get a duplicate of so that I didn't have to pack it. It just lived in my Jeep. So it became like I never had to repack my Jeep or anything like that. I would just leave because I had duplicates of everything and it was already in there. So to this day, like that's pretty much how my Jeep is all the time. Like if I just need to go, it's like a bug out vehicle. Like if I just need to get on the road, the Rotapacks have water in it. There's fuel in the fuel caddy. I've got duplicates of everything in there as far as first aid stuff is concerned and spare parts and all that other jazz. So I can literally just like grab the keys and go if I absolutely need to, which is a huge thing for me as far as feeling safe and prepared no matter where I am, even when I'm at home.
Yeah.
Duplicating things.
Uh-oh.
We can't hear you, Tara.
Hold on.
I can read lips though.
Can you?
Weird.
I could just say all the
Now we
bad
can't see you, but we can hear you.
I-
And we lost Arla somewhere. I don't know what happened to Arla.
too.
She'll be back. How's it going, Kristen? Is your flight
All right, let's try that.
arriving soon?
Well, we're getting there. We got a couple
Getting
minutes.
there? Okay.
I'm like watching the.
Yeah. We don't want you to miss
Oh,
your flight.
dang it. I was going to screenshot that for Tara so she could see the face that she was making when she came back.
Perfect. We'll just take screenshots of each other. I don't remember what I said. Oh, the double toolkits. So I would forget tools. So toolkit for the Jeep and then a toolkit to stay home. And then for the last hurricane, because every time I come home this month. So I had actually taken my Jeep before I left to go to Alaska. I'd left it in Orlando in the airport parking lot in the garage so that I knew when I came back, no matter what the scenario, because it's the vehicle that can get in and out when things flood. I had put all of my recovery gear in it for just in case. And so I left and I get texts on my phone from my dad. He's like, hey, where's all this? Because he likes to steal my stuff when I'm gone. And I'm like, it's in the Jeep where it belongs. He's like, well, why would it be there? Nice try. It's all sitting in the airport, which is
So I know where it is.
not where it be stolen. But yeah, the double of everything helps a lot. Worrying about something or leaving something behind.
So I think that's possible when you're traveling solo. But for example, I'm traveling with 3 children, so I run out of payload and space really quickly. So, having the spare parts would be awesome, but we don't currently do that. We take plenty of water, we take plenty of food, we make sure we have things like that, recovery gear. We have a winch on my vehicle and stuff, but as far as spare parts, we don't really do a sparing kind of thing currently. So
Well,
I think it kind of, if you're able to.
Did you say Jeep, Misty?
I have a 4Runner and a Jeep. My husband drives the Jeep. I drive the 4Runner. Yeah. So let's see. What's that?
Which one's cheaper?
To fix.
Parts-wise.
Yeah, the Jeep. Yeah. But it's a JL, so it's harder to find parts sometimes.
Okay.
So
Fair enough.
there's that.
Well, that's why you get a JK.
Yeah.
You can buy parts anywhere.
Oh, we got another comment here. Kelly, ask my family how I get when people take things out of my truck. So Kelly travels with Cottywomple Overland, and he has the big Ram Power Wagon, and he takes that on any trailer you could imagine. And but they call his truck Mom's Purse because he's the guy that carries all the extra parts and all the extra gear and all that stuff because he's got the huge pickup truck. So everybody just needs a Kelly to follow behind them. And then you've got everything you need. Yeah. Yeah, or a trailer.
All things, yeah.
Yep.
But obviously I go for months at a time, so I have to have it all in there. That is home for months at a time. So yeah, there's a lot in there. As minimalist as I am, it's still a lot. It's
interesting because you have to be prepared. When we were traveling full time, we had to make sure we had jackets and shorts and wool socks and flip flops. I mean, everything is just and it depends on what elevation you're at too. So I mean, it can change rapidly.
Those space
That's why
bags
everyone's
are my friend. Like the vacuum pack bags where
Yes.
you can suck the air out of everything and turn it into this teeny little thing. I would stash like my winter gear and hunting gear and stuff like that would live underneath the back seat of my Jeep. And just like the things that I didn't have to use very frequently, I would put in those bags and like stuff them into whatever little hole I could find somewhere. So.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
I hate rattling or sounds of any kind. So after you've like compacted them down and you shove them in between things, like it just does away with all of the Jeep rattle as well. So like you really can't hear anything if it's loose.
Yeah.
You would hate my FJ then.
It squeaks and
There
makes all
are
kinds of
so
noise.
many noises. I've given up on any other new ones. I'm like, it's another noise. Add it to the list.
Yeah, we have the game that my youngest calls it. He knows when there's so gone sound, and then it's like, where is it coming from? With the G. Great. No, like it.
I've got a new high pitched whistle that sounds like a dog whistle. It's just constantly. I'm like,
Oh,
no noise.
Nope, can't do it. And they make those bags like that, but they also make them scent proof. So for like anybody that's in bear country a lot, I have the scent lock ones. Not super cheap, but they are kind of worth it. I use them for my children's shoes.
Oh, that's a good idea for sure.
So yeah. So, but yeah, a little better. And Christina, we should use them for your food, apparently.
Yeah.
Yes, for your steaks. For
Steak
sure.
trash.
In my defense, they were in like, well, most of my stuff was in like a bear box, but it was the grease, I think, from grilling them the night before that was in the grass underneath like where the cooking setup was. And I was just thinking to myself, like, this was the dumbest idea. Christina, like, why? Why would you do this to yourself?
Was it good? Was it worth it?
They were amazing, I will say. And the steaks with a view of the Tetons, like, can you really beat that? I don't know. But yeah, the grizzly bear the next morning made it slightly less enjoyable.
Yeah, it's beautiful, but it's time to go.
Yeah, for sure.
So I have one more comment I want to show, and let's see here.
I might have to jet, guys, because I got to catch a flight, 7:05,
Okay.
and we're boarding.
Bye. Bye,
Bye, guys.
Kristen. Safe
Bye.
travels.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Bye.
All right, let's see here. Barlow Adventures. I guess no one ever told me I shouldn't, referencing traveling solo, or I wasn't listening. Reading the post above, many mentioned carrying guns. I'll say, just like a winch or a high lift, guns are very dangerous to the user if you aren't trained to use them safely and responsibly.
Yep.
I would say that's a good point, for sure. You know, any tool that you bring with you, you have to definitely know how to use. If you don't know how to use it, it's useless. There's no point in carrying the extra weight and bringing it. And then there's also the safety factor, you know?
This is definitely another, like, male versus female. It doesn't matter who you are. Like, if you are going to carry a firearm, please, for the love of all that is holy, like, take a training course. Even if you are going to not carry it and just have it physically present, like in your home or something like that. Like I said, this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart because I taught these classes back in New Hampshire and I taught women's firearm safety, but I also taught men's orientation classes too, because it doesn't matter who you are. Like, people, especially when it comes to firearms, I feel like there's a lot of ego that comes into play, and there's a lot of sort of questions that people have that they're afraid to ask, especially like women are afraid to ask these things. They're afraid to sound stupid, but absolutely no question is stupid when it comes to this stuff. And I feel like having that comfort factor, if you're going to go ahead and do something like that, if you're going to carry, if you're going to even purchase a firearm to have in your home for self-defense or something, like, please, for the love, take a course, because she's absolutely right. Like, it's not a tool that is useful to you unless you know how to use it and use it safely. And I have seen more men than women, to be honest. I have seen more people be unsafe with firearms who are like, oh, well, I grew up with them and like I've always had blah blah blah, my dad taught me, yada yada yada. Like, that's great, but at the same time, like, people also establish a lot of bad habits, and bad habits can sort of stack up over the years. And for me, teaching the women's courses, it was really interesting because I feel like women tend to be safer with firearms only because, for the most part, they were taking these classes because they were totally new to it and they hadn't established any bad habits yet. So you were able to train from the ground up, and you were able to establish safety from the get-go. And it's just, for me, like, that is the most important thing if you are going to be considering arming yourself while you're doing something like this.
Same.
Absolutely.
And to add to, well, like anything else, where if you are out of practice with it, there is nothing wrong in refreshing courses on it. Or it's one of those things that, like, if you haven't used one in a year, go remind yourself how, because when you're put in a situation where your adrenaline is rushing, like, it is a totally different scenario than being at a range or having something coming at you. And I know personally, I carry one gun on me, and Christina, like, probably have more than me, but I'm more a knife. Usually, I would say usually I might have a shotgun too, but for me, I also have kids as a factor of, like, I have an 11-year-old and, you know, a teenager in the vehicle, and to a point, I trust them, but I don't entirely ever trust my 11-year-old with anything, because he's one of those who's kind of like, let's see what this does. Just by anything I have in the vehicle with me has to be kid safe to a point as well, or usable if something happens to me. So in those scenarios where they have an emergency, I need to know that they can actually function and use whatever that is. So for me, I keep a revolver instead, because that is simpler and easier for them to also handle in high stress moments, as far as just super simple. But so again, learning what type of gun you are comfortable with. Everybody's got a different preference on that as well, as far as in those scenarios. But I'll be honest, the gun has never done me any good in any of the scenarios that I actually had to protect myself in. The knives did.
Yeah. So Todd would like to know, do you lovely ladies carry a firearm?
Oh, there.
Who does? No, Kelly.
And who else has knives
I was
within?
I was given some lethal bear spray by someone. He's like, I got it on the dark web. Here, take this. I said, thanks.
Dark web bear spray.
I
Hey.
got some dark web bear spray.
Yeah, it's effective on humans as well. So absolutely.
I will say what I carry depends on where I'm going also. So I have a 12 gauge shotgun that I bought specifically for what it is and how it's put together, because it is basically legal in every single state I could possibly go into, with possible exception of California. But I think the one that I have is actually California legal too. So it definitely, like I said, you have to just look at what the rules are in every state that you're traveling in, because every state is completely different. And just because you have a concealed carry permit in one state does not mean that it is good in another. And even if it is good in another state, the firearm that you're utilizing may have very specific rules and regulations for where you can take it to. And I've experienced that more and more. But there are websites that you can go to that give you like a clear view. If there's a specific state that you're curious about, you literally just click on that state on the map and it'll tell you like what the firearms rules and regulations are for those states that you're traveling through. Shotguns are the easiest thing to carry across the state border. A 12 gauge shotgun, and you can basically go just about anywhere. It's not obviously as easy to carry as a handgun is, but it's easier to be safe with. And it's easier to, I say easier to be safe with because muzzle control is easier with a long gun than it is with a handgun. So that's what I mean when I say it's easier to be safe with. But it's also just easier to sort of drive around without as much worry about where you're going. And when I'm going on long trips that include multiple states, that's often a factor. So just kind of being cognizant of that if you're going to carry and you're going to defend yourself that way, I think is important too.
Yeah, knowing which states have reciprocity and with whatever current state you are permitted to carry in is definitely important as well.
Yeah, and
we got to do a couple more comments here. Go ahead, Tara.
Pretty much any national park, as soon as you cross that boundary line into them, like usually, well, there's states where you can have the gun in there, but the bullets have to be 6 feet behind you in the back. You know, separate you. So, but for national parks, it's pretty much for almost all of them a no-go at this point. As far as, so you've got to make sure, which sometimes I'll forget of like, oh, got to stop, unload things, separate things far enough and all that. But national parks are generally just considered a general no-go area too at this point, which is why I don't camp there anymore, because it's actually easier to national forest or BLM land and not have to worry about that stuff.
Yeah. That's a good point. Kelly says, my spookiest students have been 60-ish-year-old men who have been around guns all my life. Quote.
Yes.
Yeah. Say yes to that. And Lee says, buckshot.
So yes and no. I actually have mine loaded buckshot slug, buckshot slug, buckshot slug. So
nice.
Kelly's spray thing, in my experience, so knife first. I always keep a knife in my boot or within arm's reach. They're everywhere, all over my Jeep. And generally people know that by now. So they know just, stay arm's reach away. And the bear spray though. So I keep one in the trailer. Everything I've duplicated between the trailer and the Jeep as well. So there's bear spray in the back of the trailer because who knows where you're going to be standing when that happens or comes into camp. But it works on humans too.
Yep, it sure does. Very effective. Me too. Slugs are important.
So there's a new gun at Expo Denver West, where some of the guys, God, who I was with, I don't know, Aiden and Josh, we were at a booth, and one of them brought it up, and I need to look it up. But it was not an actual gun. There was some kind of slug thing in it because they are from out of the country and they can't get a permit to carry in the U.S. And so it was an alternative to that. And some of the slugs were like pepper sprays. They were all different. It looked more like a flare gun to me, but I don't remember the name of it. But that was new at that expo, and that was also an interesting alternative, at least to keep in a vehicle, because then you're not dealing with the whole firearm aspect of state line issues and things like that. But I would have to look up what the name of that was. But it was a new thing that came out.
Okay. Oh, yes. Launchers and have pepper balls. Yes, that's what I was going to say. Pepper balls. So that's
God, I would
another.
myself or something. Like I just have bad luck. Like pepper spray too. It would come back. That would be my
Yeah, being pepper sprayed is not fun. I can attest to that for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, my husband was Coast Guard. We used to go for fun and watch them get pepper sprayed every.
Yeah, I was one of those Coast Guards that got pepper sprayed. It was not a good time.
It was yes.
And you have to retain your firearm and keep it away from somebody while you're dealing with the pepper spray in your face. So it's a good time had by all. But I'm
The wives
digressing.
bring, at least in Oregon, the wives would bring the lawn chairs and watch.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for being on tonight, ladies. I really appreciate the conversation. I think that we've shown that as long as you're prepared and you're safe and maybe you get some training under your belt, you can absolutely go out and overland solo. What do you guys think?
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's a learning experience about yourself. And I think that more than anything is one of the top reasons why I chose to do it, because it's just, to me, it's important to have that time and to make those discoveries of places and things and self. And I think it's a unique experience for sure.
I think
Absolutely.
the best quote about the difference between overlanding and camping, because everybody likes to call it camping, that's the thing, is that the point of overlanding is not the destination, it's the self-reliance factor and the traveling part of it, not the end camp or where you're going, because you don't know where you're landing most of the time. But It's about, ultimately, it comes down to being about self-reliance and being able to sustain that for long periods of time.
Yeah. And it's definitely about the journey itself. I mean, every part of the good and the bad and anything that you encounter along the way. So thank you guys again. Thank you guys for watching tonight. And this podcast will be live on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify and all the others by tomorrow morning. So again, everyone have a safe and good night, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.